Welcome to How Now, the podcast where we talk about how to live in the now. And here's your host, Kim Martin Raymond.
Peace and blessings, love and light. This is Kim Martin Raymond, host of the How Now podcast, where we talk about how to live in the now. I am a minister, spiritual life coach, author, and founder of Redefining You LLC, where I help my clients to realign themselves, mind, body, and spirit. If this is your first time listening to the How Now podcast, welcome. You are now part of the How Now podcast family. So go over to www.hownowpodcast.com. Pick your favorite podcast platform. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share to my channel. And then you can also click on the banner there, and it's for our How Now YouTube channel, where you can click subscribe and like as well. And also keep up on current shows that are coming up week after week and see some of the shows that you may have missed. So again, that is www.hownowpodcast.com. Okay, so let's get into today's show. And we're going to be talking about what's my motivation. We're going to be talking about morale boosting, because we know that in this time of pandemic, it has been a challenge for people to retain good staff members. It's been difficult for people to navigate in this new space that we're in. And so we want to make sure that we're taking time to find incentives and things that are going to help to boost people's morale and to, renew in them the purpose that they had for the places that they're employed at. We're seeing a lot of people just not feeling or not having the initiative or the incentive to continue in the spaces that they're in. But those who are, we want to make sure that we're retaining them. And to help me with that is my lovely guest here. And as is customary with the How Now podcast, I'm going to have her to introduce herself at this time.
Well, thank you, Kim. My name is Diana George with By George HR Solutions. And I teach people how to hire right the first time so they can focus on the business and not in the business. And so with that, I've been called the morale booster. I've been called the voice of reason. And so I share that with my clients and teach them how to do the same thing.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here and for taking the time to talk about this very important and timely subject, because we are seeing a lot of that. As I was sharing with you prior to us starting the show, I'm in the childcare industry, and we've been seeing a lot of struggle with people being especially owners being able to retain, quality staff and for finding, ways to motivate them to stay. So before we get into that, talk to me a little bit about what you were doing prior to the pandemic, and then we'll talk about how things have been going since then.
Sure. So prior to the pandemic, I have a HR consulting business. And so I was working with clients and going to them. And I work with sometimes CEOs. I do individual coaching. I do training. I've also done recruitment. I teach them how to hire right the first time. So in terms of HR, I've been an HR professional for close to 30 years now. So anything that has to do with HR, I can navigate you through that and help you to see what it is that you need to do to improve your own organization. So that's what I was doing before the pandemic.
Okay. And then what happened? Then of course, 2020 came and we were sent home, and it was just like, wait a minute, what's going on? And people were kind of confused about what was going to happen, how their jobs were going to stay intact if they were not there. And we saw some differences that took place. We saw a lot of things like Zoom and other things that came into play that helped us to be able to connect when we weren't able to, quote unquote, go outside. And so talk to me about how things changed after the pandemic, the pivots and things that you had to make with regards to your business.
Absolutely. So I think we all know that the COVID and the pandemic just changed the way that we did a lot of things. What I can say for myself, because I have clients, I was already using Zoom way before the pandemic. So it just enhanced my use of Zoom. I still, because some of my clients were essential workers, I
Mhm.
was still out there with the clients during that time. So it didn't change a whole lot for me.
Mhm.
What it did change is the traffic that I saw when I was out on the highways because
Mhm.
everybody was at home. But
Right.
what I can tell you that happened personally and also professionally is I saw the void with people being home and not having people to talk to. I saw it directly impact them. And so I found myself just spending a lot of time with personal friends, with family, and with clients, just spending that additional time, having conversations, keeping them engaged because people were afraid. They weren't sure what was happening. This was all unusual to them. And so with that, people kind of shut down. And if you're a people person and in HR, you kind of recognize the signs. And so
Right.
when you recognize those signs, you got to step in and you have to really start to engage people even more. So I found myself doing that even more so, after the pandemic hit. And it was definitely necessary. Some of my clients that I had, unfortunately, they did have to let people go or downsize during a certain time, and really helping them to navigate what that looked like so that as we were talking to these individuals also, we kept in mind the purpose of making people not feel a certain type of way.
Right.
It was just a situation. And I think that with human resources, that's the biggest thing that you can do. You don't make it about the person, but you make it about the situation and how can we improve upon the situation.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like I said, I know that there are a lot of people who are probably reaching out to their HR specialists and representatives and saying, hey, what's going to happen? What are we going to do next? What is this going to look like for me? How, if I get laid off, am I going to be able to collect unemployment? What kinds of things are going to happen? So I know there were probably a flurry of questions spiraling around, probably a little bit more than you would have typically gotten, prior to the pandemic because of the, myriad of changes that were taking place. So I'm sure that was a challenging situation, for our staff. I mean, for our owners of businesses. But talk to me a little bit about retention, because I know retention, of course, that's always an issue with any business, making sure that you're retaining quality staff. But what did that look like after the pandemic?
So that's a great question. So I have a saying that your employees are your greatest brand ambassadors because your employees, it doesn't matter what the business is that you have. If you don't have employees there, you can't sell your product or you can't sell your service.
That's
And
right.
so they are your best brand ambassadors. And what I can say also is during the pandemic, you did have business owners that didn't know how to navigate the waters and they didn't necessarily treat their employees the best during that time frame. So as soon as those employees saw it out, they were gone because it forced people to really just step back, everybody, and take a look at what was important in life.
Right.
And so during that time frame, people found themselves spending a lot more time with family, probably more time than they have spent with them in a very long time. And they realized, I miss this.
Right.
And I don't want to go back to what I was doing before. And on top of that, I don't even like the place that I'm working. So, like all those things combined, it
Right.
was an element for people to now say, you know what, this is my opportunity to not go back or even start my own business. And so
Right.
that was the beginning of the great resignation, as we call it, and
Right.
also, retention. And so it really forced, I think, business owners to realize at that time that it's no longer the time where business owners have the upper hand.
Right.
I mean, like those days were over with in terms of that. We need to come with some fair, equitable things for people that we want to work for us. And we need to have some things that we're giving. It has to be that give and take relationship. There has to be some synergy there. And I think prior to the pandemic, I mean, it had probably a lot of times gotten to be very one-sided.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it opened up the eyes of a lot of business owners that, okay, like I'm going to have to do something differently. And so I think we're still navigating those waters right now. I don't think all business owners know exactly what that looks like. But what I can tell you, it looks like people being fulfilled. It looks like people being happy. It looks like people enjoying their jobs. That whole thing about going back to something that you don't like every day and getting up miserable every day, people are not down for it anymore.
Nope.
They've had too many things that have happened, and they're like, nope, not doing this anymore. That's it, new game.
Right. I mean, and you make a very valid point. That's the thing. A lot of people are doing it. They're saying, well, no, this is not for me. I think I'd rather just go ahead and try it on my own because I don't want to have
Mhm.
to deal with things, and then, people are, they think about exposure. Some people are like, I don't want to be exposed to
Mhm.
COVID. I'd rather be at home where I know it's safe and where I know how I clean and I know how I disinfect and I'm not going to put myself in a position of danger, but just like you said, also with our owners of business, our business owners, they're really having to say, oh, okay, now I really have to make it about, about the people who are here that are supporting my business. And, like you said, without them there is no business. And
Right.
so it's definitely a matter of saying to them also, or offering incentives that are going to make them want to stay, or to make them want to know that they're valued. Because I think that's the biggest thing also. People want to feel valued. They get up and they have a purpose and they're going out every day and they're wanting to, they're coming there because it's their passion or something that they enjoy. And then they get there, and if they feel undervalued, they're out the door,
Yeah.
you know? So it's just,
Absolutely.
it's a matter of figuring out, what are some things that we can do? What are some incentives? What are some things? And I know that they've had, a lot of the PPP loans and other, support that they've given certain people to help their businesses to stay afloat. And let's talk a little bit about the importance of that, because I'm sure that, some of that is supposed to trickle down to those who are employed within your business. So how was that looking?
Yeah, so I just want to just touch a little bit about, something that you said, people want to feel valued, and you talked about also incentives. And so there has to be that understanding of what that looks like, because I think some individuals think, okay, I'm going to throw incentives out there to people to get them on board. And you have companies that are doing right now, they have signing bonuses, they have, extra vacation, they have all these type of things. But it boils down to that person being feeling valued and feeling that they're a part of a team or a group. So you can put all those incentives out there, but if you get that person and you do have the opportunity to hire them, but then you don't have the right company culture, or you don't have the, value those individuals, they will still leave. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter. And I think that's what people really need to understand. You hit it on the head. People need to feel valued. They need to feel that they're part of something bigger, and they also need to be on purpose. And that's what's missing right now in organizations. Some people are just looking for a job to pay the bills.
Right.
And if you're looking for a job to pay the bills and that's your end all to be all, if there's not other things there that you agree with, then it's not going to be a long-standing relationship. At the end of the day, our purposes are not the same. And so I think everything goes back to what you just said, purpose, and aligning that purpose. And if you're going out there and you're looking for a job, you should look for something that aligns with your purpose. The values of the company should align with who you are. Their social, things that they do, philosophies should align with who you are. All those things need to be in place. And the same thing for the employer. If you're employing somebody, you should be looking for somebody that shares the same values as your company and they're on purpose. That's a winning formula. That's when you have synergy. That's when you have the full component. But without that, you're going to have people that are constantly going, and you will constantly see retention issues because it's not a match.
Right.
And I always equate getting the right individual and hiring to like dating. Okay, when you go on that first date, you don't tell that person everything. You hold a
Right.
lot back. And so
Right.
if you're, trying to get the right employee, okay, are you getting their representative in the interview process? Or are you getting the right person? Are you getting the person that's going to show up on day one? Are you just getting, that individual? And the same thing with dating. We go into dating a lot of times, we think we found the right person. And then, 6 months, a year later, we're like, I don't know who I have here. I don't know who this person is. And so it's very much the same. And so we need to use the same, steps in terms of determining if this is the person that's going to be right for this organization.
Yeah, I mean, again, excellent and valid points that you're making there. You definitely, it's a relationship,
Yeah.
especially if that person is on your administrative team. They have to be an extension of who you are, and if they're not, just like you said, there's not going to be that synergy, and synergy is so important. Empathy, like I said, we hear that buzzword a lot. Are we just, are we being empathetic of the people who are existing in our company? We talk about incentives and we talk about signing bonuses for those people who are coming on, but what are we doing for those people who have been there, who have been in the trenches, who have stepped in and stepped up when others were not there? What are we doing for them to show them that we appreciate what it is that they're doing? I'm in training, so I do a lot of customer service training, and I try to express to the people, to the owners and the administrators that I train, the importance of remembering that your customers are not just the people that are coming through the doors, it's the people that are behind the scenes too. Because they have family members who they can refer for your services and things of that nature. So they are just as much a customer. And I think that it's important that they remember, we do things. I think about like our phone carriers, they do all these incentives, but what about for all the people? What about all your loyal customers? Can I get $1,000 off on the phone, or can I get $500 off on the phone? Are we just doing it for the new people that are coming in and not really showing any regard for those who have been there and actually have been the pillars for your business?
Exactly.
It's a challenge. It is a challenge. The whole dynamic to me of business and trying to, figure out what that formula is. And it's to me, it's something that is unique to each and every business. Like you said, it's all about the culture that is established, the environment and what that looks like. And it's so important that when you're choosing, to do that, or choosing the place that you are looking into what are their core values and do they align with yours, and what is their mission statement, what are some things that you believe in, and whether that's going to be something that you're going to be able to stick to. So and another thing that you said there, I know there's a gentleman who's on YouTube who talks about how people are just coming to work, and I cannot remember the term that he uses, but it's like they've quit the job and they're just coming in there just to, like you said, do the paycheck. I'm just here for the check, and so I'm just sitting there, but I've really checked out. In essence, that's what he's saying. I've checked out. I'm no longer interested in being an employee here, but I've got to make ends meet. So I'm just gonna sit here and take up space. I'm going to punch the clock, do what I need to do, collect my check, and go on about my business. And just like you said, it's a relationship. You have to start looking at people saying, oh, okay, is that what this person is doing? And is that the person that I want to represent my business? And if so, I'm out the door. So it's a lot. It is a lot to consider.
Not only is it a lot to consider, but I think there's a lot of things that we can do and be proactive about. And that's the good thing about it. It's a lot to consider, but you just mentioned a scenario where somebody has been checked out, and that they're checked out, but you know what? How did they get to that point of being checked out? And see, that's where we have the opportunity to do something beforehand. And there's quite a few things that I use in terms of tools and resources to do that. One of them is a stay interview. We've all heard of what an exit interview is. And by the time you do an exit interview, it's way too late. That person's on their way out the door. You're not going to be able to change their mind. There's been things that have happened. And the great thing about exit interviews, I will tell you, is at that point in time, they pull no punches. They tell you everything that's wrong because they're leaving. And they know that they're leaving, so they're like, I'm out. And they tell you everything. But what if you can get them to tell you ahead of time, those things that are challenging to them or that need to be addressed on a company level? And that's where stay interviews come in. And I really encourage people to do stay interviews with their the individuals that work for them. I try to encourage people to do a stay interview at least once a quarter, because it kind of gives you that barometer of where that person is, what's happening with that person in their own life. And on top of that, they love the fact that you want to hear from them. It says that I care. It says I see you. And once again, we go back to people want to be acknowledged. They want to be, appreciated. They want to be seen. And so what better way to do that than to sit down with an employee that you have or somebody and really get in contact with them and find out what's going on.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. I love that, a stay interview, because that's one thing I was going to ask about, exit interviews, because it is important to for employers to know why people are leaving and what's really going on in the minds of those people who are doing the work, who are boots on the ground. You want to know, because sometimes as an owner, we could be out of touch because, we're doing things on that corporate level, on that, higher echelon level. And we don't, sometimes go out in the trenches and see what's going on with those who are actually physically doing the grunt work. And so, yes, it's important to have those exit interviews, but I love that you say that stay interview and that you talk about doing that once a quarter, because it definitely establishes that relationship that I'm just checking in and making sure that you're good and that you're okay. And that, and then it's also giving me an opportunity to do any course correction that I need to do, so that way we're still walking along the same path and you haven't veered to the left or to the right. So, that really talks about the importance of feedback, because sometimes I think we make the assumption that, everybody's coming to work, so everything is great, everything is fine. But we never stop to just really ask them. We just assume that, because people are coming, and we don't know their reason why, that everything is okay. So I love that important piece of feedback. It's so necessary that we don't assume that everything is good. And the next thing, that person's walking out the door and we're miffed about why they're no longer choosing to stay. Yeah.
Well, you just mentioned feedback. And so not only is that so important, but also, when you're in a job, I mean, are you asking for the feedback, not just in a stay interview, but in all aspects? If you have employees and, like you said, their boots on the ground and everything, a lot of times they have more information than you even have. And so it's important. But imagine when you get that feedback, how gratified a person feels, like, wow, they hear what I think, they want to know from me. You've now engaged that person. You've made them a part of the process. You've put them in there. They have ownership right now of what's going on.
Right.
And so that's the name of the game. That's how you retain people, is you make them a part of the process and what's going on. You encourage the feedback. You encourage suggestions. And let me say this, you also let them make mistakes without coming totally down on them.
Wow.
There are, things that we know in any company is you shouldn't do. Stealing is one of those. We know that. But if you have a person that's in your company, you hire them for a particular position, you need to empower that person.
Right.
Let them do their job. And understand that they may not do everything 100% the way you would all the time, but then you have those sit downs to figure out, where do we need to get back on track, or how can we do this differently? But if you let a person actually do the job that you hired them to do, and they feel that they can do that without repercussion, because somebody's going to come down on them if they make the wrong decision, they will go the extra mile. They will do what needs to be done, and they will figure it out, because they're part of the solution.
That's right.
And so when we make people part of the solution, we get more people that's engaged, and that's not just in the workforce, that's in life.
That's right. That's right. I mean, and the one thing that I love is that it's so important that we establish those relationships, that we have those conversations, that people feel as though we're approachable and they can come to us and have a conversation and not feel that they're going to be shunned. So just like you said, that empowering piece is huge. People need to know they have skin in the game, that they're part of the solution, that people listen to some of the suggestions that they had. And then, more important than anything else is not just that you're collecting data, but that you're doing something with it. So that,
Exactly.
So that we're not just being reactive and acting out, when a situation occurs, that we're being proactive and saying, okay, these are some things that we see that may be coming down the pike, or these are some things that have been consistently issues, and how are we diagnosing those things? How are we coming together and diagnosing those problems? And are we bringing everybody in, or are we just leaving them sitting around trying to figure out, well, what happened? It's all about that communication. It's all about coming together as a collective. It's all about being a team. And so I think that those things are important as well, to make sure that people feel like they're engaged, like they are a part of the team, So everybody has a part that they play. And so it's wonderful if you give them an opportunity to play the parts. They're trying to play them all, because we all know the micromanager. And things never go well when someone is micromanaging.
Well, the thing about a micromanager, also, that people don't realize, and especially the micromanager, if you're a micromanager, then you are an overworked manager. Because guess what? You're trying to do everything. and you haven't allowed the people that are around you to do their job. And so you become this overworked person. And so let me tell you some of the things that happen when you overwork. You become frustrated, you become angry, you're going to become mean, you become all those things that you say you don't want to be, but you put that on yourself now because you're micromanaging.
Right.
So, the best thing that you can do is to delegate and allow people to do their job, because it allows you to do your job. And I think one of the most important things, and you'll find out if you find yourself doing somebody else's job all the time, then you need to ask yourself, okay, why? Why am I doing somebody else's job all the time? Is it because I won't allow that person to do their job? Is that person not capable of doing their job? Does that person need more training to do the job? But it's actually an opportunity to ask yourself, why do I always find myself doing somebody else's work when I have things that I need to do myself? And so as the organization grows, everybody has, like you just said, a part in the growth of the organization. And when you allow people to wear their hat and to come and play the part and role that they're supposed to play, you have a team. And if we take a look at the most successful sports teams, that's what happens. You don't, see, other people, doing things on the team, it doesn't matter whether it's football, basketball, baseball, or trying to do and be in a position that they're not in. They're out the element.
That's right. That's right. And that touches on an important point too. We talk about, people, knowing their role and being successful in their role. So it makes it more personal as well. We talk about the team aspect, but what is it that person is bringing, and do they have the confidence, and what are we doing to boost their morale personally so that they feel as though they have the capability to perform at their optimal level for what it is that they are competent in doing. So it's really about empowering the person as an individual so that when they come to the team, they can play their position in the best possible way. So that's something I think that's important as well. Yeah.
So I know one of the things that constantly comes up, and we've been told, and for me, this is a total myth, that, your personal life is separate from your professional life and vice versa. And what I've learned over the years, especially being in HR, there is no separation. You are one individual. So who you are is who you are. And so when you show up at work, and I'll give you a prime example of this. If I have somebody that I've had to constantly sit down and talk to about lateness, and they have an issue with lateness, believe me, they're not just late at work. They're late in their personal life also. If you ask any of their friends, they're like, oh no, they don't ever show up any place on time. So guess what? You have an opportunity to help a person be better in life, not just at work, but in life. Because guess what? If you help them at work to be better in something or a skill set, that skill set is going to transfer over into their personal life. So now we're empowering human beings. Now we're empowering people to be the best in whatever it is that they're going to do, whether it's in their communities, whether it's at church, whether it's every day. And that's when we have the change in society that we're really, really keep talking about, but we haven't totally seen just yet. That's when we'll have that change.
Right. I love it. I absolutely love it, because like you said, we don't change. It's not like we walk through a transformation booth and we change into somebody different when we get to work. We maybe have to be a little bit more organized. We may have to be a little neater than we may have been at home, but a lot of your personality traits and things tend to trickle through on both sides. And even if it doesn't start that way, eventually, your true colors will show. You can only put on airs for so long before people get to see you for who you really are. And just like you said, it is important. It is about how we're living life, and we hear about work-life balance. We hear all of these buzzwords and, we have to make sure we're doing this, and we have to make sure that we're doing self-care and things of those natures. But we have to be able to incorporate those things into both aspects of our life in order for there to be some level of fluidity. Because everything is not, it's not balanced left or right or all black or white. It's more harmonious. It's more of that fluid motion. And how are we able to maintain some type of fluidity between our work life and our personal life, so that way there aren't so many hiccups or so many sharp, ups and downs that take place, in both of those, because it's going to affect you personally. If you're frustrated at work, and everything is okay at home, or if you're frustrated at home and you're frustrated at work, where is your place of solace? There has to be some place where you can stop and land for a minute and say, okay, let me look around for a minute and see what the heck is going on here. So there has to be that space, and even if that's in the car on the way between work and home, there has to be some place that exists where you can make those necessary transitions. Correct?
Well, you know what? The fluidity, you mentioned that word fluidity is the new balance, because you have to remember nothing stays the same in life, at work, or nothing. So you will have certain times maybe at work that you have to give more time, whether it's to a project or something. And then at the same time, you have things in your personal life that now you need to step away from work. And so it's not going to be balanced all the time. That fluidity that you just mentioned, those peaks, those valleys up and down, that's the fluidity, and being able to manage that and understand that it's not going to always be balanced. It's not going to always be equal. But I think that when you come with your 100 A game all the time to both personal and professional, that's when you're successful.
Absolutely. And like I said, communication is key. You have to be able to the employers have to understand that there are going to be some things that are going to be critical. I think about my parents. My parents are getting up in age. If something happens, everything is getting dropped at work, and I'm going to go and see about my mom and my dad, because that's my family. And there has to be some level of understanding with that as well. And that's where these communications have to come up. That's where, talking about, when we were talking about incentives earlier, saying, once a month, everybody gets a mental health day or something that lets somebody know that, okay, we care, we understand that things happen, and here are some things that we can do to assist you in the process. So that way you don't feel like, oh my goodness, I have to take time off, and then I've got to call HR to find out if I got a job when I come back because I needed to go and see about this and I didn't have a choice. So these conversations and things like this have to come up so that, that way that balance or that fluidity is created.
Well, I will say this. I think those companies that kind of understand, and they do get, understand about engagement and keeping great employees. I think the pandemic was an eye opener for them, because I think with the pandemic, it did also, it put everybody on the same playing field. So I don't care if you were the owner of the company, the CEO, I don't care if you were vice president, I don't care if you were the janitor. You know what? Everybody was at home and on a Zoom call. And if you got kids, the kids are running behind you, the dog is barking, the cat is, so everybody, was experiencing the same situation. Sometimes that's actually a good thing, because when people get removed from a situation, that doesn't affect them, they can't, like you said, have empathy, or understand something. But guess what? If we're all in the same situation now, now you understand and you have more reality on what that person is experiencing. So I think that those companies that really understand, their employees, they got it, during the pandemic. They saw, what was going on for themselves because they had to experience it. And so, the goal would be that as we get back and, we continue to return, because let's face it, some companies, I think as a result of this, have understood and now get that, well, you know what, we don't necessarily have to have a brick and mortar. Is it really necessary for us to have everybody come into the office, all the time? Or can we have a part of our workforce that's hybrid? And some companies are making it totally remote. So you have companies that are taking a look at what's best for their company and, their growth and their production, and then being able to say, this is what we're going to do. And I think that that's a great thing, because let's face it, if there's no need to go into an office, to get into a car, to drive 45 minutes, to waste your gas now, that happens to be $4 or $5 a gallon, to go somewhere for a meeting that basically you could have done at your home on Zoom, like, why do it? It makes no sense. It's not logical at the end of the day.
That's it. And it's not cost effective either, because hey, that's one less roll of toilet tissue, paper towels, janitor services, people that have to come in. We want people to have work, but absolutely it's a a no-brainer when you sit there and say, okay, what are some things that we can do? What really is the bare minimum here that we can do? Or, is it necessary to have that physical touch, or like you said, is it that hybrid, or is it that total remote? But it's nice to, it's unfortunate that it took the pandemic to
Yeah.
put us in that space, but at least it put us in that space, and what we did with that information, what we did with this knowledge, what we did with this experience is really going to be what creates the successes that the companies are going to have moving forward. We went through this, and now what tools are we taking? What have we learned that we can take with us that's going to help us to be proactive in keeping our company moving forward and creating that fluidity. And I love that you said that, yeah, it put us all on the same playing field. It humanized people that were not human. We think that people who are in positions that are higher than ours, have this certain particular life, and then when we see them on Zoom or something, and their dog run by or their kids run by, and we're just like, oh my goodness, they have a dog too, or they have a cat, and their cat jumped up on the table too. It humanized a lot of people, and my hope is that in doing that, it opened the door for even better communication or better relationships, because people now see, oh, okay, that person's just like me. That person, is functioning at a level just like me. They may have a nicer dining room set, or they may have a nicer couch, but they're still like me. So I love that we at least can learn from that. So it's all about, you said opening doors. It's all about creating spaces for people to be able to thrive and to be successful. So I love that you call yourself the morale booster, because it is about morale, because I think it has been at an all-time low at certain companies. So what are some things that you kind of encourage employers with regards to those who are struggling with company morale?
First of all, you have to find out why. And you have to, and the other thing I have to say about that, if you're the company owner or you're the people trying to find out why, you have to be open to accept the information that you get. Because some companies, they'll do the surveys, or they'll so we're going to find out why, but they don't like the information that they get back. And as a result of not liking that information, then, it also causes, some resentment, or, nothing is done about it, or it's not addressed. So if you go down that road, then you got to be willing to confront what's really going on and ask yourself why, and then be able to change that. I think that's the first thing. If you ask people what they need and want, and they tell you, then I'm not saying they're going to get everything 100%, but how can we work or navigate some of this so that both sides are winning at the end of the day? Because if one side is just winning, and it doesn't matter whether it's the company side or the employee side, that's not going to work for anybody. And that's where that synergy comes in. That's where it needs to be winning. And, I think that people are okay with, okay, I'm willing to give this if I can get this. And, it's all about, but if you just feel constantly like, okay, I'm not getting anything out of this, and I'm just being used, what you're creating is resentment at the end of the day. And so, because nobody wants to feel that way. So I think that's the first thing that they can do is, start, find out from your employees through an engagement survey or a survey, how they really feel about things. Number two, you have to be willing to, digest and take the information and take a look at it honestly. That's when you look at the man in the mirror. If you got a company, you look at the company in the mirror. Are we who we say we are, or do we need to make some changes? And if we need to make some changes, that's okay also, because what that does for the employees, once you make those changes, it makes them feel like, oh, they heard me. It makes them feel like, wow, they listened to what it is that I said. And it makes them feel valued, because now you've taken something that was a potential problem and you've addressed it. And so the worst thing that you can do, I can tell you right now, is do an engagement survey. They give you the information or feedback, and then they never hear from you again. That's the worst. Because guess what? The next time you do an engagement or feedback survey, nobody's going to answer it. Because they're like, well, I already did this one time and nothing happened. I didn't hear back. I got nothing changed at all. And so I think that those are the biggest things that you can do. And I will tell you this, I'm a very simple person. When I say simple, I think that we make things so much larger than it actually is. But the simplicity of it is communication.
Yes.
That's the simplicity of it. All these other things that we're trying to do, and we live in this technology age, and we're going to do this, and this. Basically, there's no substitute for sitting down and having a conversation with someone, a real conversation, because you'll get more information there than you will with any other gimmick or anything else that you're trying to do. And I think we need to understand that we've gotten so off that track
Right.
when it comes to, because we have all these other distractions and we think that this is going to fix it or this is going to fix it. Well, no, good old fashioned communication,
Right.
sitting down, having a conversation, that's engagement.
Yeah.
And that's really what people want at the end of the day. These other things are, nice, but it's not long lasting. It doesn't have the longevity that communication will always have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. I mean, I think about companies that, where they've had, a mass exodus of staff and people are spread thin. So there are so many stressors on those who are left with the company and who have to pick up the mantle for those who have left and the challenges that they face. And just like you said, sometimes they just want to be heard. Sometimes they need a break and it's a matter of figuring out, okay, how do we rotate? How do we make this possible for them not to feel so spread thin? How do we go about trying to help to support those who, just feel like, okay, I can't take on one more task. It's a challenge. It is a challenge. And there's no magic bullet for how it can be resolved. But just like you said, good old fashioned communication. Even if it's saying, we're working as hard as we can to make sure that we're not bringing in another person who is going to walk out the door 2 weeks later. We're trying our best to hire quality people so that way they're staying. And that's what, that's what we're looking for. So that's why it's taking some time. So please work with us. It's things like that. Like you said, good old fashioned communication. Good old fashioned communication.
So, Kim, you just said something that's so important, and that is not only that communication, but allowing the employees for you to communicate to them in a certain way, even if you don't have all the answers. And I think what happens in a lot of companies, they feel like, well, I don't have all the answers, or we haven't solved this yet, so I can't share. And so what you do is you put that person or employees in a mystery. And so if you put them in a mystery, guess what? They're going to come up with their own idea of what they think is going on. It could be right, it could be wrong, but they're going to come up with something. So wouldn't you rather have them understand or know what's going on from you, the company, versus them kind of coming up with their own? Because, water cooler talk is real. And even though we remote now, you have Zoom talk, it doesn't matter. They will come up with their own, fill in the blank if you don't give it to them. And so I always say that it's much better for you to fill in the blank than for them to fill in the blank and it be totally wrong.
That's right. That's right. I love that. And that's exactly what happens. Like you said, that water cooler talk is so extremely real. Gossip and all other kinds of things. I was like, you know what? If you're going to tell all kinds of stories, go on and write your book and be an author and and get paid for it if you're going to do it. but that's the thing. If you're going to be the Brothers Grimm, go ahead and do that. But, there's no place for that in the workplace, especially if you're looking for there to be successes. So like I said, you have shared some wonderful, wonderful tips. You have shared some solid nuggets, and I hope that people had a pen and pad ready, or they can listen to it in the replay and hear about the wonderful things that need to be done, that help us to move forward professionally and personally. We need to have that morale boost. We need to feel that value, and it does start from within. But every now and then we need someone to come alongside us and help us along the way when we can't do it ourselves. And so it's important for us to have that communication and to have that relationship and to have those around us who can support us in those efforts of feeling, satisfied or feeling, that we have a sense of purpose. Just like you said, purpose is huge. I hope that people think about the takeaway of that stay interview. That's so critical. I think that is an awesome idea. I've always thought of the exit interview, but never thought of the stay interview. We have to learn to be proactive in these times so that way we're anticipating behaviors before they happen. So that way we're not running up against that fist or running up against that brick wall. We want to try to avoid it before it comes at us. So I thank you for coming and sharing your expertise, for sharing your knowledge, and for, just allowing us to take a portion of your day to come and talk about the importance of morale boosting and retention. So thanks again for being here. I want you to tell people how they can get in contact with you in case they want to know a little bit more.
Sure. So you can always go to my website, which is www.bygeorgehr.com. And or you can reach out to me, and my email is info@bygeorgehr.com. But one of the things that I truly believe in is that, we sometimes take a look at what could I do, and I'm just one person. But you know what? We're all a lot of one people. And so if we all collectively decide that we're going to do something different, we'll have a group of people, and then we can have the impact that we want to have. And so my goal is to always be able to help individuals that really want to do better in their life, in their career, but just like you said, that human aspect and empathy, it goes back to, that age old saying, treat people the way that you want to be treated. And I think that when we kind of get back to that, and understand what that really means, then, we'll be okay. But we need to kind of go back some basics or fundamentals.
That's it. That's it. I absolutely love it. Now, one thing that I always do with all of my guests before we go is I ask them how they are living in this now. And I know you mentioned that you had some personal pivots that took place in your life with regards to the pandemic. So tell us a little bit about how you're living in this now.
You know what? I have to say, people, when I speak to my friends, other people, they're like, girl, you living your best life. And I really am, because, at some point you realize it's like, okay, am I going to just lie down and be a victim to everything that's going on around me? Or am I going to find a way to go ahead and still be the best that I am and live the best life that I want to? So, I had the ability prior to the pandemic, as I mentioned, to be able to, have my own business and, have clients and do what I need to do. But one of the things that the pandemic did when it shut down, it made it so that I can work from anywhere in the world. And I didn't have to be stuck in one place. And so I've really taken the opportunity to, get out and do things that I want to do. I mean, within the last year, I've been to Aruba twice. I'm in Aruba right now. This is my second time here. And I spent the last 8 months in South Africa. And I'll be going back to South Africa next month. But it allows me to be anywhere that I am in the world, but experience, life. Because the thing is, what you only have right now, what's happening right now, and nothing's guaranteed. And so, I don't want to have any, I wish I could have, should have.
Right.
I want to be able to live right now in the moment. And I want, if anything, I would tell people right now, live right now in the moment. Be present in whatever it is that you're doing. So whether you're having that conversation with your 10-year-old child, be present. If you're at work, be present, because there's so many things that will miss us just because we're not present in that moment. That could be great moments and aha moments for us, and things that we can treasure a lifetime, but we've missed it because we're not there. And so just being present, I think, is the most important thing that I've done, and I continue to do. And so I love my life.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And that's what we need to do. We need to be able to be present. Remember that when we're present, present is the same word that represents a gift. It is a gift. This life that we live is a gift. And it's not one that we have for an eternity. We're here for a season, and then we move on and we transition to where it is that we go next. But, it's important for us to just remember to live in this now. And that's how we live in this now. And with that, I am going to say thank you for joining us for this edition of the How Now podcast. Again, Diana, thank you so much for being with us and for sharing of your time, talents, and your treasury. And you're always welcome to come back, because what's happening now may not be what's happening a couple of months from now or even tomorrow. So the door is always open for you to come back, and we'll look forward to seeing you on our show again. So thanks again for being with us. And again, that'll do it for this edition of the How Now podcast, where we talk about how to live in the now. And until we see you the next time, I say peace.